my mug. Stand by.
Trademark. Well, folks, I'm Dave.
And I'm Sean.
And we are Barstools and Bandtalk. And we ever got a humdinger of an interview here tonight. My friend Sean set this one up. So I'll let you bring him in. Fair to say he's a roundish musician and drummer, percussionist. He's played a lot of great acts. I'll let Sean bring him in. So go ahead, Sean.
Well, just before I do that too, I want to say thanks to everybody that gave us feedback on the bullpen last night. We had a lot of fun at Capital Sports with Ed and Wayne, and a lot of people were weighing in today just on how they felt that there was a lot of good information in there. So thanks very much for that, folks.
Yep, for sure.
So I happened on this guy. I'm not on LinkedIn much anymore, to be honest with you. They did something with my account, a little bit messed up, and so pretty much anybody that probably shouldn't say this, but pretty much anybody that sends me a friend request gets in. But just before I kind of got off it, I happened up on this guy, and he's absolutely cool. He's played with Lou Gramm. He was signed to a couple of different labels with a couple of different bands. He's on LinkedIn all the time, doing everything from gets this tune on the drums to just, giving, lessons and tips and whatnot. He teaches, he's learned, he's schooled. He is Rob Mount, and I am so excited to have him on the show.
Me too. Let's bring him right on. There he is. There he is.
Here I am.
Good to
Hi,
see you,
Rob.
What's going on, guys?
So when I did the intro, I happened upon you on LinkedIn, and we kind of did the I don't even know what you call it on LinkedIn. That's not the friend request, but one of the things that I picked up on right away, you do it every week, is like the guess that tune. And the one that actually, for when I went on your website, and you've got a lot of different things on there. You did 50 ways to leave your lover, and I'm sitting on, man, this guy can freaking play. That was one of the ones that stuck with me. Give us the Coles notes. Anybody that wants to know Rob Mount in about 30 seconds, who are you? What's your background? I know who you are, but tell our viewers.
Well, the quick version, I guess, is I played drums for Lou Gramm for the last 3 years of his solo band career. So traveled all over, doing many shows all over North America and Canada, where you guys are from as well. And that's the most notoriety I've gotten. But I also briefly played for a band called Liege Lord that played in Europe at the Wacken Open Air Festival and did some recording with them. I played for an original band called Ramrod. Just happened to be wearing one of our old band shirts that featured guys from Anvil and Overkill back in the mid 90s. I played on a record that came out in Japan. So a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but mostly it's all the stuff I did with Lou Gramm is kind of the quick version of what I've done of most note anyway. So
I was on your website today, Rob, on robmount.com, I might add, and you talked about a band you had put together called Scrap Metal. That sounded kind of interesting. So can you tell us about that?
Okay, well, that's nothing that I put together, but that's something that's been around for probably 10, 15 years or so. I'm not sure. It was originally put together by the Nelson twins, Gunnar and Matthew Nelson. I think they're the guys that kind of spearheaded that. And over the years, they play, a handful of gigs with an all-star rotating cast of characters. So Mark Slaughter does a lot of them. For instance, Barry Goodrow from Boston does a lot of them. Members of Vixen, Eric Martin from Mr. Big, Ted Pulley from Danger Danger, Phil Lewis from LA Guns. I think I want to say Tom Kiefer from Cinderella. I mean, Lita Ford, Kelly Kagi from Night Ranger. All these people kind of come in and out depending on who's available for the gigs that they do. And so I did the last gig that they played before the whole pandemic, thing shut down the universe, which was at the end of 2019. And hopefully I'll do more. I don't know, who knows what's going to happen, but it would be nice to do some more with them if needed. Like I said, there's got a bunch of people that rotate in and out and depending on who's available. So we'll see. But it was a great experience. Met a lot of cool people, played a lot of good music, and lots of fun.
So when you were doing those shows, who would have been on that roster when you were doing them?
Well, the show that I did had Phil Lewis from LA Guns, so he sang a couple, 2-3 LA Guns hits. Ted Poley from Danger Danger did 2 or 3 of their hits. Janet Gardner from Vixen did 2 or 3 songs. Barry Goodrow from Boston, we did like 2-3 Boston tunes. Mark Slaughter was there. Slaughter actually opened the show, and then he came on and sang some background vocals as well. Eric Martin from Mr. Big, we did 2 or 3 Mr. Big tunes, and then at the end we did like a big jam doing rock and roll with like everybody, and we all came out and played that, the obligatory ending jam song, so
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
yeah.
So in this illustrious career you've had now, like, can you tell us where it started?
Well, meaning like when I was a kid or when I started in bands, or
Sure.
okay. Well, I mean, the quick version is I started out, probably around 4 or 5 banging on the pots and pans, like, everybody does. My mom had Osmond records, so I got into the Osmonds really quick. And Jay Osmond was my first drum hero. And there's no musical, history in my family. Nobody really played an instrument, so where I got any sort of talent is kind of beyond me. But my mom always played pop radio, which is cool. So I grew up listening to Paul McCartney and Wings and stuff like that, which, I still love to this day. But then when I was like 8, Kiss was on Paul Lynde's Halloween special. And that's what corrupted me right there. When I saw that, I was like, holy shit. But can I swear? Or
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's expected.
Oh, fucking great. Okay. So that blew my mind, watching Kiss. I was like, holy shit, what's that? And I had my mom buy me a couple of Kiss records. And then from there, as I was in school, I played in all the high school orchestras, grammar school orchestras. I took formal lessons for marimba and timpani and snare drum throughout grammar school and high school. I went to the Eastman School of Music here in Rochester when I was in high school, which is one of the more prestigious music conservatories in the country, if not the world. I studied music theory, and but a drum set I mainly like self-taught because I grew up listening to Kiss and Ozzy and Led Zeppelin and Rush,
Right.
all that kind of stuff. And so all through high school I did all that, studied at the Eastman, took guitar lessons for a number of years. I play guitar too, although not so much anymore. And then after I went to college for a little while studying music education, but decided that wasn't for me. I really didn't want to be a music teacher. I didn't have the personality or the patience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, to teach a kid how to play flute or oboe, I was just like, nah, I want to rock. So then I started, getting into formal cover bands and playing the local bars. And I hopped into a band in the late 80s that traveled up and down the East Coast, doing the bar circuit from Michigan all the way down to Florida. And then I started getting into original bands and recording demos and stuff, which you've probably checked out some on my website. There's a bunch of those things. The first any sort of notoriety type of thing was in 93, 94. I joined up with the singer of Liege Lord, which is a band out of the late 80s out of Connecticut that had a recording deal on Metal Blade, and the guitar player from Anvil at the time. And we formed a band called Ramrod. We got a deal in Europe. Got lots of write-ups on our demos. Everything was going great. And then they also had signed Joey Belladonna from Anthrax, and they gave him all the money they had for his records. So all of a sudden the plug got pulled on that, and we were left paying the lawyer bills, which is a lesson learned for all you youngsters. The lawyers still have to get paid whether you make a dime or not. And and then those two guys left and joined Overkill. So I was kind of left hanging. Like, Overkill needed 2 guitar players because both their guys quit at the same time. And so the 2 guys of my band left, joined Overkill, and I was like left holding the bag. So briefly, I got married, bought a house, started having, I had my first child, kind of laid low for a little while. In 97, I was contacted by a guitar player named John Hahn, who was in Mike Varney's his column in the late 80s or whatnot, the big guitar player column that he had. And I had met John earlier opening for his band. He had a deal in Japan. They had a whole record recorded, but with a drum machine, which was done very well. But David Chastain, who some people may know, told John, I can get you a deal in Japan if you have a real drummer. So John called me up. I went down and recorded a whole record in basically 2 days down to Pennsylvania where he's from, which is kind of ass backwards because usually the drums go down first.
Yeah.
And I was the last. So I had to play a whole record by myself, 2 music already recorded, including figuring out how to end songs. And you know what I mean? It was
That'd
fun.
be really
It was
hard.
great.
Would that be, I think,
It was-
John, I would think that would be very hard to go in after the fact.
Yeah, very hard. It's very hard because, like I said, some of the songs were fade outs, but a lot of them were already ended. It was just a live type ending, right? So I had to figure out when the hell the damn thing was going to end because, of course, I had to do what they did. But it worked out well. So that got released in Japan in '97, and it's a great record. The only problem is it was kind of 10 years too late, 8 years too late. It's perfect for the late '80s hair metal, melodic metal type music. It was, a combination like Dokken and Extreme, kind of like that stuff. And it's excellent. You can find it on YouTube. There's some links on my website on the audio page. But didn't do anything because, hey, nobody wanted to hear that kind of music. Even Japan, we got a deal there, but it was still, everybody wanted Soundgarden and Nirvana and Stone Temple Pilots and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
So after that ended, I shortly got into actually locally a Foreigner. Well, it was supposed to be a one-off. A Foreigner tribute band was started to open up for Lou Gramm. So this was my intro to being in Lou's band or being in his circle for many years. So he had an original band called Black Sheep before Foreigner, and they had a record out. They toured with Kiss. They had an accident in the middle of the winter with their equipment truck. Everything got ruined, so they had lost the Kiss tour and they disbanded, and Lou ended up in Foreigner. But this band got back together for a cancer benefit in a big concert hall here in Rochester, because Lou's from Rochester, like I am. And so we put a band together with Phil Narrow. I don't know if you guys know who Phil is, but he's kind of a dual resident between Canada, Toronto, and Rochester, right? So Phil, he was in Tallis with Billy Sheehan for many years.
Right.
Phil was our singer, and the rest of the guys in the band, almost all the guys in the band, went on later to be in Lou's band with me, right? So it was kind of a foretelling of what was to come. So we did a whole set of Foreigner music. I played Lou's original drum set. He had it set up on the stage. He wanted everybody to play his original drum set, which I joked about with him many years later, these big giant concert toms from 1975 or whatever, but so we did that. It worked out so well. We kept the band going for a while, and then Phil bowed out, and Lou's nephew, which was his name was Peter Grammatico. Lou's nephew became our singer. So Peter sang. He got Lou to come down and do another benefit with us, another cancer benefit. We played 4 or 5 songs with Lou at this other benefit, and it went over really well. And while it was going on, Lou started his own solo band. This would be about 2004-ish. And at that time, he stole our keyboard player. Our guitar player soon followed about 5 years later. And so at the time, his brother Ben was drumming for him. And Ben lives in New York City. And his son was the guy that sang with us, if you're keeping score.
Yep.
You like to keep score with all this stuff. So if Lou needed a practice drummer here in Rochester, I would get a call to go down to his studio here and go practice with him. If there was a time, I ended up doing this twice, but there was a time where they wanted to record Foreigner songs, re-record them for promotional purposes because he couldn't use the original Foreigner tracks because of licensing purposes. So I got a call. I went down to and recorded, 8 or 9 Foreigner songs, just bits and pieces because it was put together as a collage of stuff. And they used that to promote Lou Gramm gigs. So then you move forward a little bit later, and Lou's brother Ben got ill 3 days before a show out in Big Bear, California. And this was like a July 4th outdoor big event. And he ended up in the hospital. And, short notice, they couldn't cancel the gig. I knew everybody in the band, been playing with them forever. And so they're like, hey, we need a drummer. You want to do it? And I knew all the songs because I played the stuff, in the band, the Foreigner tribute band I was in. And I only had to learn maybe 2 songs that we didn't play. And so I went out and did that gig, subbed for his brother. And that went really well. And that was it for a little while until, I don't know how many years later, where I got a call that Ben left for good. And so by that time, a few more of my friends ended up in Lou's band, so I knew everybody in the first band. They started rotating people out. I knew them, everybody in the band I had played with for probably 25 years. So it was like probably a no-brainer to call me in and do it. So, and then there you go. So I did that until he decided to call it quits and formally end having his own band. Now he still tours periodically. He just doesn't have his own band. So He just uses whoever's band he's with. But okay, so that's like the long-winded short version.
Well, it's interesting that a drummer who usually, the drummer always gets left behind, another drummer has to get sick for a drummer to get a gig. It's somewhat ironic, right? Yeah.
Well,
and you mentioned Phil Naro. Actually, we do know Phil because he's living in Toronto now. He's going through a bit of a rough time, but I guess he's rallying and doing okay. We've got a friend up there that keeps us posted. So that's a really nice. A lot of our viewers would know Phil for sure.
Good luck to Phil. Yeah.
Yeah. So I listened to a lot of the tracks that you have on there, and I was trying to. I see your bio. You're mentioning some of the people that you grew up listening to. A lot of them are the guys I grew up listening to, but I'm trying to pinpoint your style, and it's all over the map. The closest thing I could really come to, you kind of have especially when you're doing the heavy stuff, you kind of have a Vinnie Paul swingy kind of Texas groovy sort of. I don't know if anybody's ever told you that before.
Not him, but I like his playing. I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from in terms of like some of the Ramrod stuff that you heard on my website, because that stuff was really a lot of double bass, a lot of kind of groovy Pantera-ish stuff. And that was recorded right around the time Pantera was huge. So it was definitely
an interesting double bass, not just the, go as fast as you can. A lot of patterns and syncopation and really cool, well thought out double bass.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I try to sync up with the guitars, and it's really kind of tough to do. I mean, if you're not in sync playing that kind of stuff, it's just a mess, right? So it's kind of tough, but yeah, thanks. I mean, definitely, I loved his playing, and God rest his soul too. Probably the biggest influence I would say would be Tommy Aldridge is probably my biggest influence, just because he was. I mean, there was many guys, Peter Criss, John Bonham, Neil Peart, and then Tommy Aldridge, I would say. But it's interesting for you to tell me that, because you're coming from a totally, you're not me, so it's cool that you said that. I never would have guessed that, but I like that kind of swing and laid back feel, and that's one of the things Lou liked about my playing when I joined the band. Is I'm more of a Bonham, like back in the pocket type player. I'm not an on top of the beat kind of guy, even though guys like Stuart Copeland, who's one of my favorite drummers, one of my biggest influences. He's the opposite of me. You would never guess in a million years that I listened to a lot of Police, and still to this day, and loved his drumming, but you never would hear it in my playing. But yeah, that's cool. I'm glad
he's kind of got that peppy on top of the beat sort of
yeah.
deal. Well, and the thing is too, is because I mean, obviously I got into double kick when I was learning to play, but I really get interested in a lot of the guys that were. I mean, speed is one thing, and if you're into it, it's very cool. But and you would probably know this, Rob, to actually do some of the patterns and break it up. I always found doing double bass drum slow is very challenging, and doing those patterns is very challenging. And it struck me as those were the two things that when I was kind of reinventing myself with double bass that I tried to do. So I really enjoyed it.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. I mean, that's it. It actually is easier just to keep going. Dig, 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 dig.
Yep.
I mean, that's easy. Granted, you have to build up your endurance and stuff, but breaking it up into patterns is way harder. And you're right. Playing slow is really hard too. I mean, it's funny. Everybody thinks faster is better. And I remember a drum student I had like 30 years ago. He was into Slayer and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, that's cool. That's great. I go, but it's kind of like lifting weights. All you got to do is keep working and working and working and working and building your muscle, and eventually you get there. But the talent is being able to break it up, like you said, or do something with it. Anybody can go faster if you work hard enough, but that's
right.
That's more perseverance and just working your muscles. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
100%. And I mean, one of the guys that I still listen to that I had to go back, but I mean, Phil Rudd from AC/DC in my mind is still one of those dudes that I always say him and Don Henley are almost the same, and you can play their stuff, but it's really, if not impossible, to sound exactly like them.
It's so funny. I hear a lot of guys. I mean, everybody thinks it's so easy to get up there and play AC/DC songs, and the guys who really know their shit, and there's plenty of big name drummers out there, realize that nobody plays it like Phil Rudd does. I mean,
Yep.
he's just got that swing and that swagger, and you can't really define it. It's just a feel, and it's the simplest stuff you ever heard in your life. But you know, 99 out of 100 guys play it wrong. As weird as that, they can play the right parts, but they don't play it the right way, and there's no way really to explain that. You know, yeah,
Absolutely.
so
Do you find having a little bit of a guitar background keeps you more on track with the tunes? Because you're a pretty versatile drummer. I mean, I was reading again that you're playing anything from folk to, well, I didn't hear disco per se, but that to like an Osmond influence to, you know, the metal stuff, not to the Foreigner, Lou Gramm stuff. I mean, you have to kind of be everywhere. So you find that having that background with guitar to be able to, does it help you, I guess, assist you in your playing?
Oh, it definitely helps. I mean, the more instruments that you can learn and the more music theory and everything that you can learn, the better off your vocabulary is, and the better off you can not only incorporate it into your playing, but you can communicate to the other guys that you're playing with, you know. So, you know, but sometimes that can be a bad thing, because I don't have perfect pitch or anything, but I got a good ear. And if somebody's playing a song wrong that I grew up listening to, I can pretty much tell you right off the bat if you got it or you don't. And you try to be, you know, nice about it, but it's like, you know, I don't know if that's right, or I don't know, you know, you might want to go back and listen to that without pissing somebody off. And especially if somebody's out of tune, it drives me absolutely fucking bonkers. You know, and it's really bad if the drummer's got to sit there and tell you you're out of tune. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, dude, it's your job. But yeah, definitely helps. The more you know, the better you are. You know, it's like a painter. The more colors you have, the better you can express yourself.
Yeah.
So
Sure. Okay, so on that end, you know, let's geek out here for a second. So you said you want to mention some of your endorsements and whatnot. So what are you using for gear, and you know, and what are your weapons of choice right now?
well, I've always played Yamaha drums pretty much since I was a teenager, actually. And my main set that you see in all my videos is still that same set. I've had that set since 1985 or whatever.
Wow.
It's a Yamaha recording custom drum set. I got it because Tommy Aldridge had that drum set on the Bark of the Moon tour. It's worth of presents, but that's what I want. And so they bought it for me. And that was the first real drum set I ever got. And that's been my main. I mean, I've had other drums, and still since then, I'm not really a big gear guy. I'm not one of those guys that obsesses with having the latest this or that, or, you know, there's guys I know that buy this, that, and then they spiff it up and turn around and sell it on eBay. And it's just, that was never me. I stick with what I know works. You know, I have a bunch of different snare drums I bought, but, you know, so the Yamaha, I mean, come on, they're one of the most recorded drums in the history of music, you know, the Yamaha recording series drums, you know. So, I mean, Steve Gadd used them. I mean, everybody did. And still, a lot of guys still do.
What about cymbals?
Cymbals, since I don't have an endorsement with cymbals, it's a combination of things, mainly some Sabian, which is, of course, from the Great White North, where you guys are from, some Zildjian stuff. And my ride cymbals, actually, a company called Istanbul, which is a really interesting ride cymbal. It's really heavy and got a real nice ping to it. And, you know, I bought it off a friend and I love it. So those are the cymbals that I use. Sticks, I'm endorsed by Regal Tip, which is actually not too far away from me in Niagara Falls, New York. So they're kind of local. I use something called drum tacks, which are these little sticky things you put on your drum heads and kind of get rid of overtones and things, kind of like moon gel type things, which are very good. And then there's the newest thing I use is something called it's called no nut cymbal sleeves. And instead of screwing down the felt on your cymbals, they're kind of like a plastic, I'm not exactly sure what it's made of, thing that sticks straight up, and you put your cymbal down, and the cymbal it just decays on its own without being dampened by a felt or anything. So your cymbals, you know, ring a little more, have a little more volume, a little more voice to them. So they're very cool too. So I would check them out. You know, very, very neat idea. So that's kind of the short version.
Using anything? Yeah. It's like you're using for pedals. What do you use? Use two kicks, double pedal, both?
Well, I have two kick drums for that set because that was the deal back then. You know, just due to what you could fit in a car at the time or whatever. Sometimes, everybody
Yeah.
went down to the double pedal thing. And so I just kind of stuck with that when I was with Lou. I mean, I probably could ask for another bass drum if I wanted to, but I just used DW, double pedal, DW hi-hat stand, so those are kind of the pedals. And then everything else mostly is Yamaha cymbal stands, because I like their hardware, especially their seats, because I sit low. And not a lot of drum seats go as low as I like to be. I like to have my legs perpendicular to the floor, which is a personal preference. But so that's what I use for hardware anyways. So, and then I also should give a shout out to JH Audio, Jerry Harvey Audio. They are a huge name in in-ear monitors. And so I use their Roxanne model. A lot of guys use their stuff. So big shout out to those guys. They took care of me when one of my sets of in-ears went down at a gig. Somebody dropped an overhead mic on my one of my ears at a sound check.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
And I kind of really fucked those up. And so I had to use earbuds the one night, and they got them back to me really quick. So big shout out to those guys. Very good company. So.
Right on. Right on. So what's next for you, Rob?
Would you do me a favor? Link?
What's that? What's next for me? And then I heard something else too.
Sorry.
Well, I was just about to say, if you could send me a link to those ear monitors, I'd like to check them out, because I'm kind of in between that right now.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
I will.
Yeah, I was just asking what was, post-pandemic, what's next for Rob Mount?
Well, right now, since I left Lou Graham, I was offered a couple of different things. One was to rejoin Liege Lord, the band I mentioned that I played at Wacken and did some recording with a while back. They had some dates in Greece and in Europe and the States. I was going to do it, and then the money really wasn't there. And, it's kind of hard to leave your couch for almost no money these days. I mean, if I was 20 years old, I probably would have done it. I'm in my mid 50s, so it's like, I got bills to pay. I can't, So, a few things have been offered here and there. I have a local project that I had been working on that kept me busy, just doing fun covers and stuff like that. I did the scrap metal show with all those guys that I had mentioned.
Yeah.
When I was talking to Gunnar Nelson about doing that, granted, there's no guarantees in the music business, but he was talking about doing more, which would have been last year. And they were looking more of a full-time guy maybe to be able to do that. And he had talked to me about that. But who knows now? It's tough to see what's going to happen, because it's going to be like a floodgate if it ever really happens, where everybody's competing for the same venues and the same dates. And scrap metal is kind of a side thing for all these guys, like a for fun thing. So yeah. I hope maybe more of those. Another thing that kind of came my way too was I knew Steve Augeri, who was the singer of Journey for many years, his drummer. Mm-hmm. Tobias Ralph was in his band and needed some sub work. So he offered me to go and play some sub gigs for him. But then he ended up having to leave the band almost after I started talking to him. And then Steve brought his son in. So it's kind of hard to beat somebody's son into it.
That's happened to you a few times. It's so weird.
Well, I know. I replaced a brother, but so yeah, who knows? So right now, as far as a main gig, like a Lou Graham gig, right now I'm in between. So hopefully when this clears up, we'll see who needs a drummer. I'm open to either subbing, like maybe the Steve Augeri thing, or a full-time thing, depending on what happens. We just got to wait and see. There's no guarantees.
Right.
Another thing that I was going to do too was raiding the Rock Vault, which is a big show out in Vegas. And again, it's like a revolving cast of characters that go in and out of there, like Paul Sortino from Rough Cut, and you've got the bass player from Bon Jovi, and Doug Aldrich and all these guys, Tracy Guns, and the drummer Jay Shellen offered me that gig because he was about to tour Yes for the better part of a year. Wow. And I was about to do that until they realized Jay was leaving full time and not leaving and needed a sub. And so they gave it to his sub, Blas Elias. So, it was just another, the busy business is so close. There's close misses, and then there's things you get, and you just got to keep at it. So, a few maybes and a few hits. So we'll see what happens.
Your misses
Everything's got it.
Yeah, your misses are pretty impressive, though. I mean, maybe it's just where you are geographically, but boy, that's some big names. I mean, that you can be in touch with at any given time down there. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, it's great to I try and keep in touch with as many people as I can, and that's why I do all my videos. I try to stay on social media as much as I can. And, I do teaching. So I teach, via, FaceTime or whatever from home here. And my buddy Rob Hammersmith from Skid Row, he's their drummer. You know, him and I get together, and I've taught him a few things. Not that he needs me to teach him anything. He's a great drummer, but he's like, hey man, got some time? You know, we can get together and show me a few things. So, you know, whoever wants, you know, a fresher upper, you know, or full-time lessons, I do that too. So, you know, lots of cool stuff.
It's interesting that you mentioned him because Skid Row played here about 2 years ago. We have a casino up here, and they played up here, and Rob was playing with them. And I was a big Rob Fuso fan.
Yeah.
But he did a great job. He did a fantastic job.
Oh, absolutely. Rob he just nails the parts to a T, and as good as a drummer he is, and how he fits in with them so well. I mean, he's one of the nicest guys you're ever going to meet in the music business. I mean, that guy, he's almost too nice. You know, it's just like he's so polite and he's so proper and he's very, you know, thoughtful of everybody. He's just a great guy, you know, and so yeah, great dude.
Right on.
Tell us a bit more about your social media activity now. I was on your website and I was super impressed with your site. Now, do you maintain that yourself, or do you have somebody do it for you?
Well, I maintain it myself. I had somebody set it up because I don't know anything about setting up websites.
Right.
So the initial website was set up by somebody else who I paid to do, but I use WordPress. And so I know a little way around a computer. I'm no genius there either, but I slowly but surely figured out how to do, you know, add pictures or links or or do a blog update or whatever. So mainly anybody doing anything on there now is myself. So yep, and just enough to keep it updated, you know.
And all the social media, you do all that yourself too, the social media?
Yeah, I try to keep on that almost every day. You know, a lot of drum videos, a lot of clips from Lou and scrap metal and just drum videos. And, you know, and the one good thing I'm glad I did, I wish I did it at the very beginning when I joined Lou, but since the second year on, I bought a really good Zoom camera and I recorded all my shows. So I've got sound checks. I've got every show I did other than the first year. And that's what I use for a lot of clips. And I use it for a lot of review too, because, you know, we would go play a show. When I get home, I would pop it on and I would check it out and review it, because that's how you learn, you know. Yeah. And it's funny because sometimes you think you did great and you go back and you watch it and I'm like, wow, that sucked shit, you know. It's cool. At the time it sounded great, but it was horrible. And then there's sometimes you're like, oh man, I just totally fucked that lick up. It was out of time or whatever, you know. And then you go back and you're like, what am I talking about? It was great, you know. Once you take yourself out of the situation, you know what I mean, and you're calm, you know. And I got a lot of blooper footage out of that kind of stuff, you know. I posted one recently with the jukebox, you know, was set up too close to the drum riser. We whenever we drove to a gig, there's tons of bloopers, tons of funny stories, but one of the funniest was whenever we would drive to a gig, we'd bring Lou's jukebox from the Foreigner days that he still has. So we'd set it up behind the drum riser, and during Jukebox Hero, the thing would start inflating right behind me. So our stage guy decided for some reason to set it up a little too close to the drum riser, right? So, you know, we started Jukebox Hero. I'm clicking on the click drum, clapping my hands, getting the crowd to go nuts. You know, everybody's clapping along, and the thing starts inflating, right? And all of a sudden, I hear crash behind me, and I'm like, the hell was that? I turn around, and one of my back crash cymbals had gotten taken out by the jukebox. So it went flying towards our keyboard player. Thank God it didn't hit him. And our stage guy came up, the guy who was at fault at setting it up too close, I might add. And as he was putting the cymbal back up in the right spot, I was like, crash right in his face. I'm like, you motherfucker. I had to hit the cymbal in his face. You know, so, you know, a lot of funny stuff. And, you know, that's why I'm glad I filmed it all, because there's just tons of stuff where I'd hit a cymbal and I set my cymbals flat. I hit a cymbal and it would go like this. Now, I would tighten the shit out of those cymbals with a wrench. And, you know, every backline guy probably hated me because you're not supposed to tighten people's shit with a wrench, but I did it just to make sure stuff wouldn't move. You know how many cymbals went like this on me during the middle of a show? Even during scrap metal, I had Ted Poley came on stage and fixed one because he's a drummer. He goes, I felt so bad for you. You could see him in one of my videos. He runs on stage and rates the cymbal and tightens it back up in the middle of a song. You know, so that's a cool stuff. But yeah, if I could recommend anything to anybody, is buy a camera, film yourself. That's how you learn. That's how you get cool shit for your social media. I recorded everything since I was a kid, not video. But I started with my boombox and my very first bands. I've got audio recordings from when I was a kid playing with my very first band.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Good.
Well, it's
That's
funny.
awesome.
It's funny, Rob. You mentioned the video thing. We did a show on Saturday night, and we had a guy out videotaping the whole. He had, you know, the NFL, zip line thing, all these different directions, and there was a couple of tunes where I thought I boned something, and I went back and listened to it, and I was like, oh, it wasn't that bad. So,
Yep.
It's fun how when you're playing in the moment, you have to go sideways, and it does. And I guess the P helps too when it covers things up and different sorts of things. But it's a great point, and I like what you're saying too about because I picked up on you on LinkedIn, and what I did want to ask you, do you find that you're getting maybe I don't know more either notoriety or some opportunities through that as opposed to Facebook? Because I just friend requested you today on Facebook, but I picked up on you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's funny because that's how Gunnar Nelson got a hold of me, was through LinkedIn. Out of all the social media things, the biggest ones being like, Instagram or Facebook. I get a message from him on LinkedIn at 4 a.m. one day. I'm like, who's fucking with me? You got to be kidding me.
Who's you in my profile? Who's this guy?
I know. I was like, what is this? So, but yeah, you know what? And it's interesting. LinkedIn is very cool. There's a different type of clientele on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I think people a little more business and sophisticated, a little more mature, definitely on LinkedIn than on some of the other stuff like Facebook and Instagram. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I get a lot of traction on LinkedIn, and a lot of people who comment on my videos or whatever, they give me intelligent feedback for the most part. You know what I mean? It's like, not that cool, bro. That's cool too, but you can tell when somebody puts thought into a comment. And if you look at any of my stuff and you read the comments, it's like, wow, this person's smart. This person, you know what I mean? It's like, like you do the same thing with a lot of my stuff. And it's like, I just appreciate it more because it's more thoughtful.
A gift or an emoji.
Yeah, I know. Well, you got to balance it.
But I like when you started doing that name that tune thing. That was very cool.
Thanks.
It's just to hear down on music besides drums. But again, I picked up on today, and I told you I'm going to owe you some money for it. That left-handed thing that you were doing was just explain that with the. Obviously, people can't see it, but just explain what you're doing for any drummer that's watching this right now, because you got to go find Rob do this. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, it's tough to explain. All right, but the best way I can explain it is the intro. It's a beat that I made up many, many years ago. It's just a fun exercise. Where I got it from, I can't tell you, but I used it as the first minute or so of my drum solo with Lou Graham. And it's just, it's kind of you would count it in 4, it's just a 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's kind of got a swing to it. And all it is 2 beats between, it's like a buzz roll, like you said, with the snare drum, but you alternate between 2 beats with your left hand and 2 beats with a kick drum. But it's got a triplet feel. So it's like da 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 da, and it's like triplet, but it's double stroke triplet, so it's but in a triplet feel. I can't explain it. It sounds like a dope.
I'm watching you do it, and I'm going, holy Ian Pace. That reminded me of Ian Pace's kind of swingy.
Thank you.
Pieces he used to do.
Well, that's it. It's you would count it in 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. You would count it in 4, but it's got that swing. It's a swing triplet feel underneath it. So I slow it down as good as I can without totally screwing it up in the video. So if anybody wants to go back, within the last few days of my social media, you'll find it. I post it every once in a while. I think it's on my YouTube channel too. Yeah. I don't know. I really don't do much with YouTube. But yeah, thanks. It was just an exercise or something cool I made up. I turned it into a drum solo, bit. So the first year I was with Lou, I would wing a drum solo every night. And then after a while, I was like, I should really come up with something. Then winging it every night. So starting with the second year, I would, go ahead.
No, it's interesting for me because, talking to you, and I've got to know Dwayne Miller, who played heel for years, and he was posting that Ian Pace single-handed kind of, buzz roll the Ian Pace. it's really neat for their guys, and they get to know them and ask them exactly how they're doing it. Because again, when you break it down, it's like, okay, there's some work to it. You got to practice it, but it's the way you do it. When I thought, it was like, man, what the hell is that? And then when you broke it down, it was like, that's pretty cool. It's still going to take a little bit to get it, but it's, a very original, very neat piece.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I mean, that's all you can do. You try to make something your own, I mean, there isn't anything that hasn't been done. Everybody borrows from everybody. The key is to have your own identity of some sorts, and that was just something I came up with. So thank you, though. I'm glad you liked it. I appreciate it.
When we had Liberty DeVito on there, and he was talking about the, I'm going to forget the name of the song now, but Sean, you know which one I'm talking about.
It was Only the Good Die Young.
Yeah.
Only the Good Die Young.
And how he ripped it off from Jimi Hendrix. I said, come on, right? From Mitchell. Like, and then I listened to the song, like, oh my God, he did, but he didn't. You never would have known. Like, it's because that's a totally different song. But all right, there's nothing original anymore. It isn't what it is, right? So.
Well, the beginning of rock and roll, Bonham got from the Little Richard song? I forget what song it was, but the he borrowed that. He didn't make that up. I mean, if you listen to Jeff Porcaro, Jeff Porcaro talk about Rosanna, he got that from the Pretty Shuffle and Fool in the Rain. I mean, everybody borrows from everybody, and you can't blatantly rip somebody off. No. You kind of have to put your own twist on it. But there's nothing original under the sun anymore. There really isn't. But and I'm glad you brought up Liberty, because he was a huge influence to me growing up too. A huge Billy Joel fan. I read his book recently. I met him at NAMM. We had a mutual friend. Got to hang with him for a little while. He's great, man. I love that guy. He's a great drummer. Real, very unsung.
He's not living that far from you. He's in the Bronx, I think.
Well, I'm on the west side of New York, and he's on the east side of New York. Right. So I'm more closer to Buffalo, and he's in the New York area. So.
Yeah.
But yeah,
he was. We had the opportunity to talk to him, and he was like, I saw him in Hired Gun, and I said to anybody that listened, if I could spend 5 minutes just talking to him, and his manager emails us back and says he'll give you 15 minutes, and he was like, nope, keep going, we got 2 hours out of him, and he was just incredible. He was just so cool. And for all the stuff that happened to him, not be bitter and still doing it, it's pretty neat.
Well, I'm glad he made up with Billy. Billy did the forward to his book, and that's awesome that they finally got to, not rehash, but to hash out their differences. And excuse me, I just burped. So
burps happen.
So I know, right? This is right on the air. But I mean, we all getting older. I mean, why hold a grudge? Exactly. What I mean? It just doesn't do anybody any good. And it'd be great if he got to play with Billy again someday. Who knows? Awesome. I would love that. And he's one of those guys that you watch him play, or I mean, he's not really technical, but it's just the style and the energy that he put into it. And he's shaking his head and doing. I mean, he was just so fun to watch. And no offense to the guy who's been doing his parts. What's his name that played in Rainbow? I forget his name off top. Chuck Berge, great drummer. Yeah. But he doesn't play it like Liberty does. I mean, he's like Phil Rudd. You have that way of doing it, and that's the way it is. Yep.
That's it.
Yes.
Identity. That's it, man. I mean, you can sit there and you can sit there in your room and noodle as much as you want, practice as much as you want, get as fast as you want. But if you don't have something unique to sell, then you're just another guy. You know what I mean? You're just another guy that plays drums or another guy that plays, guitar. I mean, you have to be personable. You have to be fun to be around, but you have to have something to offer. Otherwise, there's a million of you.
That's right.
So.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about selling, how can we help you sell some stuff now, brother? We're going to talk about robmount.com. I see you have some merchandise on there. You actually sell some of your drumsticks, your personally autographed drumsticks there. They can check you out on YouTube. Now, what about Twitch? I don't know much about Twitch. Is that a US thing, or is it like a big deal? Or you have much success with the Twitch?
Well, Twitch, I don't have anything to do with that. A friend of mine, Nancy Sale, I think it's her network, and she's run that. A podcast I did a week ago, I think was on their network or was going to be on their network. Mainly just I do the Facebook, the Instagrams. I don't do anything on Twitter because I don't know. I just don't get no traction on Twitter. So it's a waste of my time. But LinkedIn is, obviously Sean knows big LinkedIn stuff. And I should pay more attention to my YouTube channel. It's, I don't know. I've just let that kind of go. I mean, there's so much out there. I mean, it's just overkill. And that's the problem today is everybody's got a YouTube channel. Everybody's got a this, everybody's got a that.
Yeah.
And while it makes it easier for people to get their stuff out, the problem is everybody gets their stuff out. So you're competing with, you know what I mean? A million gazillions of people. So that's where I stick with. So, and my website, of course. So I try to update when there's something to talk about.
And, and we want to be respectful of your time, Rob. And I'm really glad this happened because, like I said, I've been watching a lot. It's funny. We've been trying to get our YouTube channel going, and you know, we think we're doing great things, and there's some guy up here that's feeding raccoons that went viral and got 1 million hits. So I mean, who knows? You know what I mean? Who knows what is popular on?
I know, man. It's the wackiest shit, man. Somebody could sit there and unbox a drumstick or something. You know, hey, cool. You know, 1 million hits. It's, you know, somebody that's got any sort of talent. I'm not talking about me, but you know, it's just hard to get traction sometimes. You know, I mean, what do you got to do? You know, sometimes it's just crazy, and that's the problem. You know, I can sit there and watch a 4-year-old and a 4-year-old that's better than me on the drums. They sit there and go, "Holy crap!" You know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
How do I beat that?
Yeah.
But,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
well, look,
it's all good.
my friend, I'm so glad we did this. It's great to finally meet you. And I want to keep in touch. Please, send me the link for those in-ears because I'd be really interested to take a look at them.
Yep.
And we will promote the crap out of you up here, sir, because I just love what you're doing. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Thanks very much.
A real class act, Rob. It's a pleasure talking to you. A pleasure meeting you virtually in person.
Well, hey, I hope I get to, I mean, I'm like an hour away from Canada and I've got friends up there. It's like, you know, with all this bullshit going on, I can't get up there, you know. It'd be so cool to you know, I used to go to Niagara Falls all the time and Montreal once in a while, in Toronto. It's like, you know, it's like have some good Canadian beer, if you know what I mean.
I was gonna say we got some Molson products down here, it's mostly Canadian, and some Coors. Yeah, we have some great products we can offer you at no charge when you come down.
I used to go up there and buy XXX all the time because you couldn't get that here in the States, you know, for a long time.
Can't get that here anymore. Just before we go though, what was the big rock club in Rochester?
The big rock pub? Well, there was a famous one. Oh, go ahead. There was one called the Penny Arcade was pretty famous. I don't know if you're thinking of that.
Because I was in a band. We played in Detroit. We played Buffalo once. We actually went down to Rochester to check some things out. And I think I just remember it being a really cool, almost like a Gasworks Toronto type thing.
I was at the last show of the Gasworks when they closed that down, when Sebastian Bach sang, and some of the guys from Anvil. My buddy who was in Anvil, that was in Ramrod, played guitar, and I was at that show when they closed the Gasworks down that night. So yeah, that was a pretty cool place too. But yeah, the Penny Arcade was probably like our Gasworks.
I get you. Yeah.
God loves Sebastian. I had the pleasure of being chirped by him in 1993 on New Year's Eve in the Gasworks. So love him.
Yeah, he's a tall motherfucker.
Yeah, you're right. Thanks so much, Rob, and we'll keep in touch, my friend.
Yeah.
All right, Sean. Thanks, Dave. You know, it was awesome. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. So
it's a pleasure meeting you, my friend. Absolute pleasure. You take care of yourself. Peace out.
You guys, same. You too. Right. We'll see you.
Take care.
Thank you.